Hey guys, so I wanted to make this to kind of share my experiences when I needed to get domestic violence services and when I actually had to go to a domestic violence shelter. I have actually gone to a domestic violence shelter twice in my life, so I just wanted to share some reasons why you shouldn't be scared to actually reach out and get that help and go to a domestic violence shelter. It can definitely be very intimidating, especially if you've never been in any type of shelter situation before, because you don't know what to expect. It's like a fear of the unknown. So I'm hoping that by sharing my experience with this, then maybe it will kind of, sway things to where you won't be afraid, or as afraid. So when I was in my very first domestic violence situation, the shelter was full, but they still paid for me to get a hotel room. They also ordered me a large pizza, which I had pizza for days. They ordered me a pizza while I was at the hotel. They came and checked on me all the time. They didn't tell anybody where I was except for my mom. And, that was a whole mess, but they also ended up paying for a bus ticket for me to go back to Michigan because at this point I was in Massachusetts. And my abusive ex-boyfriend, he had actually lied to the landlords in the place where I was staying, and they ended up telling me that unless I paid rent, which had already been paid for that month, then I had to leave. And I was like, but we already paid. And, they said my boyfriend paid and not me, so I would have to pay or else I had to leave, which isn't right, but we didn't have a lease or anything like that, so they kind of just did what they wanted to do. And I ended up being able to, from the hotel, they brought me to the bus station in Worcester, Massachusetts. And, from there, I was able to catch the bus and go home to Michigan. So that was my very first experience. Now, the second experience was when I was in Omaha, Nebraska. And I'm not going to give you the information on where that shelter is because I don't want to put anybody else in danger. But it is in the Omaha area. It's not in Omaha, but it's in the Omaha area. And I was so scared to reach out to them because I didn't want to have to go to a shelter. I didn't want to be quote unquote homeless. That thought scared me so much because I had been to a homeless shelter before, and that whole experience just freaked me out. But the abuse got to the point where I couldn't physically take it anymore. He was throwing dumbbells at me and, pulling me by my hair out of the shower and things like that. And it was just a very dangerous and explosive situation. And so when I finally did contact them, I was at my friend Rochelle's house. She and I went to nursing school together. And I was over at her house and I called them from there and I'm like, I need your help and what do I do? So they actually set it up to have a taxi come pick me up from Rochelle's house. And the taxi driver was very, very nice. I guess he had brought people to this shelter before, and he was just telling me, that he wished me all the best and, be safe and things like that. So it was comforting to kind of start out that experience with a taxi driver who had experience dealing with people who were in that type of a situation. And not only that, but once I got there, there was a staff member that greeted me at the door, and she brought me into a private office. She offered me like a cup of hot chocolate or something like that. It was in the winter when I went to the domestic violence shelter. So they were very nice. She gave me a tour of the shelter. She had me sign paperwork. And then Afterwards, she asked me if I would go to the emergency room just so then they could document the bruises and things like that and make sure that I was okay. So I agreed to do that. And I feel like that was one of the most difficult parts of the whole process, was actually going to the emergency room and having the police officers there photographing all of the different bruises that were on my body and things like that. Because they ask you what happened, they ask you all this information, and you have to talk about the situation. And at that point, when it's fresh like that, it's very difficult to even begin to talk about that, because it's such a messed up situation. And as I was telling them and they were photographing me, I just wanted to get out of there. I wanted to go home. I just wanted to be by myself and be alone and not have to be showing different parts of my body and things like that. I just wanted privacy and I wanted to be alone. And so once we finally got out of there, I should mention, the person from the shelter stayed in the room with me the entire time. And I'm not sure if the camera just went out or something, but in case it did, the person from the shelter stayed in the room with me the entire time while the police officers were photographing the bruises and asking me to tell my story, and she was very comforting to me. Now, this lady, I'm not sure if she still works for them, but at that point when I was there, she had been working for them for almost 20 years. So she had seen it all, really. But like, as far as what she did for me, she just comforted me. And she offered to step out of the room if I was uncomfortable having her hear my story, but I wasn't. I wanted her there. And so I was very grateful that she actually offered to stay in the room if I wanted her to be there, because I felt like that was very helpful to me. And once we got back to the shelter, she told me which bed I was going to be sleeping in. That shelter was basically set up like a house. There were 5 or 6 rooms. A couple of the rooms had bunk beds, and a couple of the rooms were for like the more long-term or transitional housing, you would call it, where like a majority of the people would stay in the shelter for 30 days, something like that. Transitional housing, you could live there for up to 2 years. And I did get approved for transitional housing, but I didn't end up staying there for 2 years. After I got approved for transitional housing, I ended up meeting a guy from Chicago, and we ended up leaving. He came and got me from the shelter. It was, I ended up, the very first room I was in a room with this older lady, and I was not in a room with the bunk beds. There were 3 single beds in the room, and it was just me and this older lady. The other bed was empty. And, she and I talked a little bit, and she was actually from Kansas City, Missouri, but she had gone to the shelter in Nebraska. And I don't know, it was very comforting. They also had a counselor on staff there, and they would come do like group therapy sessions, and they would bring you to a church to go to other therapy sessions, like a group therapy. And they also had time for you to be able to talk to this counselor one-on-one. So if you felt more comfortable sharing a lot more personal things one-on-one, then you could, but you were also expected to participate, at least go. You didn't have to talk during the group therapy sessions, but you were expected to attend those. We also had house meetings. There was a computer at the house, or at the shelter. There were nice bathrooms. They had laundry facilities. There was only a certain number of people allowed to stay there, but while I was there, I was still able to go to nursing school for a time until it got like really bad weather, and the person that used to drive me to and from clinical rotations was unable to drive me anymore. So I ended up not being able to go because the buses were not running at the time that I needed them to. And so I ended up having to withdraw from nursing school and all this other stuff. And once I finally got back to nursing school, other things happened and I had to withdraw again. But that's kind of off topic. I just feel like it's very important for you to take this step to get away from your abuser. Abuse is just a terrible torture, and nobody should ever have to go through that, no matter what you've done according to your abuser. It's not worth it. You're allowed to be happy. You should be loved in the right way by someone, and I can definitely say that my life has been better since I'm away from him. He does still try to contact me, but he shouldn't be contacting me. I don't talk to him, but he messages me on Facebook. His daughter tried to add me on Facebook, which I thought was really weird. But yeah, I would definitely say that if you are in that type of a situation and you have no other option but to go to a domestic violence shelter, like you can't stay with friends or family or anything like that, it's okay. You don't have to be scared. There are very helpful people who have, been doing this for years. There was also very helpful people at the shelter that I went to that had only been working there for like months. And, I would definitely say that even if you do have somewhere else you can go besides the domestic violence shelter, still reach out for services, because they do offer resources to people even if they aren't staying at the shelter. They offer the group therapy, they offer counseling, they offer housing assistance and, transitional housing stuff like that, Also, the place where I went, the domestic violence shelter, they offered help for, they would offer you clothes, stuff for your house. If you get a new apartment, they would help you find a new apartment if you couldn't find one. They would take care of transportation for your kids if they need to go to school, if your kids are in school, if you have kids. They offer transportation to bring them to and from school, to make sure that they're safe. It's just a whole lot of resources that you really can use during that time, especially if you don't have a place of your own anymore, because of the situation. And I feel like it's really important that you reach out and get that help, because you deserve it. After everything that you've been through, you deserve to be able to have someone there to help you out through this really awful time. And so I hope that this has helped a little bit. I know this is kind of a long video and I've kind of gotten a little bit off topic at a few points in time, but let me know if there's any other information that I can give you guys as far as that goes. But yeah, that's about all that I can think of. Just don't be scared. Don't be scared, because there are awesome people who are there to help you, and that's the whole reason why they do what they do. They're there to help you. And yeah, so I hope you guys found something valuable from this video. Like, comment, subscribe, share the video, and I will see you guys again soon.